Bore da. Well, prynawn da, falle, erbyn hyn. Just want to say a few words in Welsh to kick off, if that's okay. Just gair o ddiolch I bawb arall am yr eithriau diddorol iawn, mae'n rhaid fi weid. Dwi'n fan mawr o Ceri nawr. O'n I wastad yn fan o'i gerddoriaeth ond dwi'n meddwl bod popeth sy'n cael ei wneud yn antur-stiniog yn ysbrydolaeth I ni gyd, dwi'n meddwl. A hefyd, rhaid gweud, mae'r lle yma yn rhyfedd, a mae Ken yn gymeriad rhyfedd hefyd, a felly dwi'n meddwl, fydd e'n llwyddiant mawr yn y dyfodol, a mae rhaid I chi edrych mas i'r darlun mas tu fas fan hyn, a edrych mewn i'r darlun o'r menyw ifanc, a wedyn chi'n edrych mewn i'r drych ar yr ochr arall, a chi'n gweld menyw hen fenyw yn ei 80au. Un o'r pethau mwy o brawychus dwi wedi gweld mewn hotel yn y mywyd. A mae'n lle, edrychwch arno fe dros cino mae werth gweld. So, okay, I'm now returning to English. Okay, so this is basically some reflection on the fact that I'm engaged with writing about Wales. I'm a Welshman who lives in Brighton, and I've lived most of my life outside of Wales, really. It's kind of 50-50 until the last couple of years. So I do like to think of myself as somebody who returns to Wales with a slightly foolish, romanticism, as befits most people who don't actually, most Welsh people who don't actually live in Wales. So I have a kind of burbling enthusiasm for the country, and a kind of certain journalistic skill which I like to combine, which gives me some justification in saying I'm a writer about Wales, and I edit Wales View, the main tourist magazine. So these are my kind of general observations, but I'd also like to give you, without patronising you, some reflection on what I think the experiences that you would benefit, ways of generating publicity for your businesses, the ways that magazines work, and the ways that publications work that would try, hopefully, and give you some information on, oh yeah, I can understand if we team up with X and Y business, we can offer a weekend away to a newspaper and they come. I think some of us, in my general experience, I think that businesses who work in the tourism industry in Wales are extremely daunted by the prospect of generating publicity outside of Wales, and sometimes actually focus their attentions on local businesses, etc., and local tourism. In my experience, I've found it very, very easy to get press for Welsh products outside of Wales. I found it very, very easy to actually get a real degree of enthusiasm because, let's face it, the Welsh story has not been told to death. You might feel it has because you're engaged in the Welsh tourism industry, but it hasn't. Nobody knows how to get here. Nobody knows how long it takes. Nobody knows what we've got here once you get here. And I think that whenever I deal with a commissioning editor or wherever I deal with anybody working in magazines, particularly magazines as it's my background, the appetite for Wales is much greater than you would imagine. So I introduced myself as Iestyn George for the benefit of your audience. Obviously, my name is Iestyn George, but every single first conversation I've ever had with anybody in the history of my entire life has been on the misspelling of my first name. So, as you can imagine, engagement with anybody from my accountant, my bank manager, my future wife, my friends, enemies, commissioning editors, bosses, anybody I've hired has always basically gone, that's a weird name. Where the hell do you come from? Etc., etc. So I always feel that, obviously, if I'd been dull and boring and worthy about where I am from and what I am all about, then I guess I wouldn't have the legions of friends that I have, as you can imagine. So that's one of the things I think that when you talk about customer engagement, some of the things Ken said were fascinating in that, you know, you need to engage straight away. So I feel like a tourism practitioner from the age of 19 onwards, when I was explaining to my lecturers that I'd never had a lecture in the English language before, because I'd been brought up in a purely bilingual environment and in a Welsh-speaking school. They were literally giving a round of applause to the Icelandic student who was sitting next to me, because he'd been, you know, well done to Bjarni, who has never had a lecture. And I went, I haven't had a lecture either in English. And I just went, weirdo. But so I edit Wales View, which is the, you know, which is, I'd like to say, is the primary magazine rather than brochure, for reasons I'll explain, about Wales. And it prints hundreds of thousands of copies. It's marketed in Wales, but it's also marketed right across the world. One of the other things, obviously, is the fact that all these titles are available digitally as well. I would encourage you to read the magazine, because I think it's good. I would say that, wouldn't I? But I would also encourage people to, if you give your potential customers a flavour of what Wales is all about. I think that we represent it in a very objective, authoritative and entertaining way. Again, I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm also the editor of tourism product for visitwales.com, and that is not the little slate lecterns with the little miner's lamp or love spoons or anything like that. I actually do tourism product is the overarching. I haven't had a laugh for that. I've tried that 5 times. I thought that was one of my best lines, and everyone's like, what's he on about? Anyway, so I look after the whole of the tourism product for Wales, and one of the reasons I'm here today is for you to besiege me and hassle me and give me your cards, and please tell me about the businesses you're involved in, and any ideas you think that, you know, representation, particularly having lived in Mold for 2 years, I'm kind of conscious of the fact that North East Wales is kind of underrepresented in a certain way, and there are certain challenges that I daren't get involved with because I'm not an expert in the field, but I'd like to know more about North East Wales, and I'd like to be able to get a much finer sense. I'd be brutally honest and say that when I come to North Wales, when I come to write about North Wales, I feel under researched, and it's my fault, not yours. But so therefore, come and hassle me afterwards. This is the magazine. People, happy couples, a go-go in doorways, on cliffs, and on beaches. This is the kind of material I like us doing, which is a fat man in a wetsuit. It's David Quantick. I think we like to corner the market in fat men in wetsuits in Wales. Speaking as somebody who has donned the odd wetsuit in my time. And I just, you know, whitewater rafting within 200 yards of, you know, the National Assembly building or very nearby. That's the sort of stuff that I like to cover editorially. I also like a sense of kind of something personally. I like to make our photography and make our pictures look natural and very easy to read. I don't like too much contrivance. Obviously, that's quite contrived, but it's funny, I hope. This isn't contrived and looks very, very natural, and I think that's something that I think when you're building your websites and putting together your marketing material is something that you have to take quite a lot of consideration about. And then you have to throw in the odd celebrity and all that kind of caper, which I'll go on about in a little while. But one of the reasons we featured Jamie Oliver in the magazine is he came to Wales. In fact, he came to Wales and stayed on my sofa once. My mother-in-law would refuse to give him the spare room. She was staying as well, and she cooked him a terrible shepherd's pie that night. But don't tell my mother-in-law that. But anyway, Jamie is, you know, one of the interesting things about Jamie, I feel, was that he came and did a show, and then part of his kind of series about travelling around Britain. The first thing he did was come to Cardiff. He went to Tiger Bay, as he wouldn't call it Cardiff Bay, and he called it Tiger Bay, and he went into the Yemeni community and started cooking with the Yemeni community in Cardiff. I mean, I don't see the Welsh doing that, you know, and I think that somehow the view from outside of Wales when they love the diversity of Wales, they love the ethnicity of Wales, they love the depth of it and the variety of it. Just think about the Industrial Revolution and the dozens of different nations that came to work in Wales and the legacy of those things. That's just as much an important story of Wales as someone, you know, born and brought up in the Welsh language. The diversity is a riveting part of Wales because it, you know, everything we were talking earlier, weren't we, about Anglesey, but and obviously a copper. Amlwch, you know, just the nuts story, Amlwch and the copper industry and the fact that, again, it attracted people from all over the world to come and work there, you know, and fascinating stories. Anyway, so I think, you know, we owe a debt of gratitude to Jamie for coming and making that programme, and it was great to have him in the magazine because, let's face it, he's really, really famous, and he's really, really famous beyond the boundaries of Wales and beyond the boundaries of Britain and into Europe and much, much further beyond. And I think that's the kind of people that I like to see in our magazine. They either have to be very clever and authoritative and maybe not as famous as Jamie Oliver, which is a big ask, or they have to be Jamie Oliver. And so these are the kind of principles I have regarding the magazine. And I think, you know, I'm not just sort of saying, look, there's my magazine lecture. I think these are principles that Ken has talked about, Kerry's talked about. These are all, you know, principles that apply to your businesses personally. You know, it reflects a contemporary country with a great heritage. It celebrates diversity and difference. I've touched on that. It strives to be authentic and not contrived. I do so many things, and now we're on camera, I'm really going to get in trouble, aren't I? I do so many things that are off message, but one of the things is that there's a great business in West Wales that I won't mention the name of that talks about its location being picturesque. It's a very dramatic location. It's been a fantastic project. It's been, you know, really well put together. It's a successful business. There are so many things to say about this business that are really positive, but picturesque it isn't. But in sentence 2 of it, and it refers to what you're saying about why, you know, the English language is quite a specific thing. You know, words mean things. Please don't go adjective crazy if your place isn't picturesque. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. Not everywhere can be picturesque. And as we talk about, as I mentioned, you know, we have the greatest landscape. You know, we're very proud of our landscape. I drove, you know, 300 miles from Brighton to Portmeirion, and it was a pleasure. Not around the Birmingham area, obviously, but once I got into Wales, I was smiling to myself like a lunatic. And I will mention Narnia, Pete. You know, 1 minute it's raining, and it was nuts, I'm in the mountains, and the next minute I'm in snow-capped. It's like somebody's just created a film set for me. And then 4 miles down the road, we're back to the rain again. Fantastic. But it was, you know, literally I was transformed into Narnia on the hills of Snowdonia. It was just amazing. So, but I mean, it's not, you know, that's picturesque. It's dramatic, actually. I wouldn't say it's picturesque, because no way am I standing outside in that. But also, on the way to Portmeirion, it made me feel excited about going to Portmeirion, because I knew there would be roaring fires, and there would be a nice warm welcome, and it was, you know, I love that estuary. It's beautiful. So you kind of go, okay. So you know, even though I'm in the middle of a snowstorm and various rainstorms, I'm still excited because I'm going to somewhere where I know I'm going to be warm and comfortable, and these are the things that, you know, make people love coming to Wales. You know, this is what people love about Wales. And we have a complicated story, let's face it. If we're not talking about linguistic and cultural differences, we're talking about, you know, one village and another village are totally different and at odds with each other. Then you have regions that are at odds with each other. Then you have a transportation system that's, shall we say, not as fantastic as we'd like it to be, or certainly the road network. It's, you know, let's not burden our visitors with that kind of stuff there and then. Let's, you know, I try and break it down into tiny little nuggets of things. There are so many good things to talk about, but I don't think we hide away from, as a magazine, don't hide away from talking about issues and problems and all these things, because it's part of the rich tapestry of life, let's face it. So Dan Snow is historian broadcaster. He wrote a feature in the last issue. You know, I'm never happier than when I'm in Wales. You know, do me a favour. You know, Dan Snow, that is. Clever bloke and that. You know, eating and drinking, it's heaven. Giles Corran, one of the best columnists in the British publishing industry. A culture that calls on its past and can look to its future. Again, Jamie, you know, the melting pot of different languages, cultures, and ideas. And then Caitlin, who, I don't know, does anybody know Caitlin Moran as a writer? And she's my favourite. She's an ex-music journalist, so we're kind of like we formed this sort of odd little union of hopeless proper journalists, because we were music journalists when we started. But, you know, Caitlin Moran does love Aberystwyth Twist so much, she wants to eat it like a crisp sandwich. That is not a word of a lie. That's not, you know, that's not overstatement. She genuinely goes there every week. She goes there 1 week, every year, after Green Man Festival, she goes to Green Man, and then she now loves Number 6 Festival in Portmeirion, and she'll go there as well. So, like, Caitlin basically resides in Wales for most, and this is a woman who sold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books, has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, and loves Wales to bits, and her family do. So, you know, these are people that we need to collar. You know, you need to collar them on Twitter, and you need to kind of make yourself known to them. You know, these people are now readily accessible through social media, which is a fantastic thing. The learning process is really what people talk to me about, what journalists talk to me about Wales. Cardiff is now a credible, authentic European capital city. I think to be brutally honest, a lot of it's got to do with the FA Cup coming to the Millennium Stadium and the experiences people had after that. It's taken a long time for people to recognise it, but they have. The coast and countryside of Wales is promoted very heavily, so people recognise it. The castles and heritage is the same. As I mentioned, the sport, I think the Ryder Cup as well. I mean, we're talking about service industries and stuff. The Ryder Cup weekend, you know, let's face it, you know, I was there as a punter, 5:30 in the morning outside Newport Station, raining, cold, wet, miserable, thinking the Ryder Cup, why, oh, why, oh, why did they have to rain after all these years, you know, a decade and a half of preparation or whatever it was. The service was just phenomenal. It was everybody. They put such a smile on your face and a stride in your step. And that was just basically people shepherding you onto buses from Newport Station. The queues were long, the rain was heavy, and everybody arrived at Celtic Manor with a smile on their face. And then we had a 7-hour rain delay. You know, we had the first tee off. I remember being on Radio Cymru trying to justify the enormous expense and it was terrible and you shouldn't do it, etc., etc. And you're standing there in the pouring rain, mounting sort of not a very convincing argument for the amount of money and time and resources that had been spent, because it was pouring with rain and everybody was kind of hiding. And then we had a 7-hour rain delay and we all went to the bar, Americans, British, Europeans, everyone, and had the greatest sort of lock-in, golfing lock-in of all time. And everybody was plastered by the time that, and this is just the punters, we're having games and, you know, people having drinking games, meeting, you know, friendships were built forever and a day. We spent an afternoon with Californians who were going nuts about the welcome they'd received. Now that's adverse, you know, just as that you have Goel y Glaw, you know, when you celebrate the rain. That was one of the best experiences I've ever had in Wales, you know, and that was purely in supremely adverse conditions. So let's deal with it. It rains, yeah? Put a jacket on, you know. Let's not pretend, you know, I've heard statistics saying that Anglesey has the same climate as somewhere in, I don't know, somewhere really warm in Italy, you know. You know, it's hard to I'm not saying you shouldn't justify yourself, and the rainfall, if you literally are standing there with you know, rainfall gauges, that's fine, you know. But let's just deal with the fact that we don't have fantastic weather, but it's fine. But there are brilliant things to do here. And you know, we don't put too much blue sky in our magazine just for the sake of putting blue sky in it. We get blue sky, but we also get, we get cloud as well. What they don't talk about enough, and I feel these are opportunities for you to exploit, I think that these are stories that journalists are really hungry for. Food and drink, without a doubt, is such a fantastic resource in Wales, but we don't make enough of it. There's not enough consumer-facing boasting about the quality of our produce and the quality of our places to eat. Cultural diversity, I've mentioned. Art is not something I've mentioned, but Kerry mentioned that that we should be celebrating local creativity of all kinds, and you should be making a special effort. There's no point, you should be pointing people towards great art that's been created in your towns, in your villages, and all other areas, because that's something that really does give wealth to an experience. And the Welsh language culture, that's something that's absolutely key, I think. And again, it's not something that we, there have been periods in history when we've literally sat there and kind of almost denied our own national culture, or done the opposite and gone on about it so much that we bored people to tears. There's got to be a happy medium. We exist. We exist as a Welsh language culture. We exist as a multilingual culture. Again, let's just reflect that. This is James Dean Bradfield from the Manning Street Preachers, and there's a couple of examples of people that I'd like to use and listen to, and use them as people who are kind of, I'd like people like this to be consumer-facing, giving people their experiences of Wales, and sort of educating people and giving them a sense of, look, it's not Catherine Jenkins, and I'm not having a go at Catherine Jenkins, okay? But it doesn't have to be a kind of a sort of celebrity agenda set by our national newspaper, which is ephemeral, to say the least, in terms of our daily experiences, and they're set personally. I've said it before. I just don't think that, the kind of level of the way that we deal with celebrity and trying to sell Wales, I don't think is done as well as it should be. I'm not thinking about this as a celebrity. I'm thinking about him as an authoritative figure, really. And he does look that angsty and miserable all the time. So, and I'm making
really,
apologies.
It's quite strange when you obviously I've been lucky enough to go to places I would have never have gone to because of my job and the band that I'm in. I think when we first started touring in the early 90s, 1991, sometimes inevitably people ask where you're from, and back then you'd say Wales. And then you'd say somewhere near Caerphilly because you'd think they'd heard of Caerphilly, and more often than not back then they hadn't heard of it. That seems to have changed a lot since the early 90s. Now and again, back then, people would just go, "Oh yes, Wales it's full of wizards and castles," and you'd be like, "Yes," and that's fine. I don't mind that image,
Strange sudden end. Yeah, don't you love that? Caerphilly. Yeah, we're from Caerphilly. Do you know Caerphilly? When they're in like Las Vegas or something. The innocence of youth. Bless him. Another person I have a very high regard for, among the hundreds of people, I literally could sit you here for 3 days and just show you videos of people I think are clever and funny. Rob Penn is I don't know if anybody saw you, there was a BBC 4 series called Tales from the Wildwood, which he actually took over a patch of woodland in Monmouthshire. He lives on the foot of the Black Mountains, and he ran it like a business. Because I didn't even know that woodland was planted. I thought it just grew there, and obviously there's natural forestation, but so much of obviously Wales. I'm aware of the fact that we have forestation as part of is not just the Coed y Brenin didn't just suddenly appear out of nowhere. But Rob he's also written a fantastic book about cycling. He's a mad keen cyclist. And the book is called, it's all about the bike, or not about the bike. I can't remember now. Anyway, it's a fantastic book, and he's a great speaker. one of the reasons I'd show you this is because, you know, he's an Englishman in Wales, and I think that gives an interesting perspective to visitors to Wales as well.
One of the things that is very obvious to me when I think about Wales as a country is that being small is a source of strength, and that you can come here and meet people who know their country. Most of the people you meet in Wales know their country. You can say that of China or of France or of the USA, but here, because it's small, people are aware of all of it. And that is a fantastic opportunity for the visitor. So you can come here and you can get it.
So I'm trying to collect a sort of series of these. Again, if you know any eccentric, clever nutters who are worth interviewing, I'm trying to collect a kind of portfolio of video interviews with the idea of then talking to them about their favourite places in Wales and then shooting those places on video, and that's something I'd like to do in the next year, start work on as soon as possible. So, very briefly, I must be running. Oh, have I just been given like a carte blanche? Yeah. Kerry's normally standing there with a crossbow going. There's like, you know those little kind of lights that you get a kind of, I feel a red light and I know I'm dead man walking. Press coverage, what helps? Visual assets. Your photography is so important to your business. You will not get, you know, by and large, somebody will come to your business and spend, let's say they spend a weekend in northeast Wales, walking, enjoying the experience, staying in great places, eating great food. They won't come with a photographer. So if you want the commissioning editor to be excited by the prospect of sending somebody to Northeast Wales first, you've got to impress them with photography. And secondly, if they're going to run it in their newspaper or their magazine, you're going to need some really good assets. I've used photographers, whichever business I've been involved in. The first thing I've done is work with PR. Fortunately, I'm married to a PR, so that's. I still have to pay her more than the market share, I feel. But anyway, she doesn't do me any deals, and photography. And I employ a photographer to shoot whatever business, whatever I'm doing, because if you haven't got those two assets, you can't speak to the press. I mean, you can speak to the press without a PR, but you have to be kind of really knowledgeable about what you're doing. So I think that I'll be brutally honest. I'm not. You know, the services of photographer, I'm sure, are varying in their price points. All very reasonable. Exactly. But I mean, I'd rather spend 1,500 quid on a photographer than spend 1,500 quid on advertising. It's as simple as that. I think a lot of advertising is just pointless, particularly now that you have engaging social media. If you're engaging with businesses, you don't always have to spend. I think you have to balance everything, a bit of everything, but don't put all your eggs in one basket and think, right, it's all about photography. And also, to be brutally honest, video content is increasingly important. You know, I engage in a lot of video content production for brands to tell a brand story, and similar thing with, we shot a fantastic film at Green Man 2 years ago. You know, just to give a flavour, in 5 minutes you can give a flavour of something. They're literally, I'd like to think, you know, they're battering down the internet 3 minutes later trying to book tickets for next year's event because they've seen the Green Man film. You know, and that can last now for 5 years, you know, and it's just a brilliant marketing tool. Online presence, clean and simple. There are other people who are far wiser than me who are going to explain to you about your digital marketing. And the other thing, I think, just to take note that you're always recognize that you're part of a bigger picture. I know that we've done this by dint of doing events in different localities. I would like you to think of yourself as a joined up operation, you know, and think about, you know, not thinking about rivalry with local businesses, but collaboration with local businesses, which I mentioned, but also recognise that there will be businesses in the Lake District or the Peak District or Scotland or Ireland, etc., etc. So what you're delivering to the I'm not talking about delivering to the customer, but what you're delivering to the commissioning editor on a newspaper or magazine has to have a certain attraction. And I don't think, when I say, I don't like the phrase USP, because, that's the sort of thing that has you pacing the floors at night, going, why are we unique? Why are we unique? Why are we like nothing else that's ever existed, ever in the history of the world? Come on. Do you know what I mean? Don't burden yourself with that responsibility, but just be aware of the fact that, that you are part of a much bigger picture. And so, something that's quirky, interesting, observational, different, those are the important things. Timing, you have to think in 3 or 6 months in advance of publication, particularly with events-based stuff. Again, we talked about, previously I've talked about Mother's Day and sort of cornerstone events in the calendar. You have to think about what you're selling to a PR would have to think 3 or 6 months in advance about what idea they're selling to a magazine 3 or 6 months in advance of actual publication. And then the thing that I've benefited from hugely in my experience as a journalist working in Wales is getting local businesses to collaborate, so that, I've got 3 golf clubs lined up, I'm staying in these places, they're all talking to each other, they're going, why don't you go to this restaurant or this cafe, rather than kind of this idea of, right, we've invited you down, you're all ours, don't even look, no, don't look over your shoulder, there's another hotel, B&B, restaurant, the fact of the matter is that you want to try and engage people to stay a minimum of 3 days, 2 nights, and in doing so, they have to have a variety of experiences. They have to have 3 or 4 different experiences during the day, and they will have to eat and possibly stay at the same place, but eat at different places for that experience. That's what journalists want. They want variety, 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 variety. Your guests might not be the same, but you have to offer that variety to the journalists, because that's what they want. The other thing I'd say very briefly, I know Kerry's now giving me the evils in a big smiley evil way. Try not to overdose on press trips. When you're kind of personally, this is what happens in the industry. So if I go and play golf in Austria, I'll have to go with another 6 golfers in Austria, and we'll all kind of like that, and there'll be somebody walking us around, and then they'll show us the thing, and we feel like, sort of golfing sheep sort of thing, being sort of hoarded around. I don't think that's what Wales is all about. Personally, I'd rather have, a partner, a journalist and their partner or their family down for a weekend that they have that's special to them. Most golf trips I know, particularly and I know it happens in Wales, and this is not criticising the way that we do things, but I just think that from your business point of view, from your hotels and your restaurants and stuff, I think you need to give those people the same experiences that consumers would be. Like you said, it's experience. And in order to do that experience, you do not, 5 journalists in a minibus is not really living la vida loca. Do you know what I mean? I don't necessarily want to hang around with 5 other journalists going, yeah, it's all right here, isn't it? Yeah, it's all right, yeah. Yeah, where are you going next week? Oh, I'm going to Mallorca, play golf. That's not what it's all about. You really want to give people, you want people to be, they want to feel the excitement on their fingertips, and they're going to do that when they're with their nearest and dearest experiencing these things. So that's what I would encourage you to do in terms of attracting visitors, in terms of attracting journalists to your business. Journalists love the new and the offbeat, unusual rooms, oddities on the menu, peculiar drinks menu. Ken's already, you've already mentioned this. I mean, I'd go a further step on this. I'll challenge you. Take the chocolates off the pillow and put a little piece of Welsh cheese on there instead. And that's the only time I've had the opportunity. I've used that 4 times, and it's the only time I've actually had the opportunity to tell a hotelier without him sneering at me and looking as if to say, yeah, you tell me your business, mate, and I'll tell you yours.
I have to agree with you on the chocolates.
Yes.
The mice would get it.
And the last thing I'd say is, well, no, it won't be the last. Yeah, working with Visit Wales PR. If you send, there is a resource there at Visit Wales. Jane Harris, who's got tons of experience. If you let her know what your business is up to, she will. If you can convince her, she's almost like a commissioning editor in her own way. If you can let her know what you're doing, she will bat for your side, and she will then spread the word wider. And that can only help you. At the very least, it's an email press release or an events-based or whatever you're doing. Make sure that Visit Wales are kept in touch with what you're doing, okay? And I think we've talked about the biggest asset we have here. Great landscape, the people. This is where we're talking again. We're talking about lock-ins in pubs in Harlech on a Tuesday night at a pub quiz, where you walked in 2 hours earlier and thought, "Oh, just give me a plate of fish and chips and let me be, because I've been up since 7 playing golf, it's been raining, I'm tired, I'm cold." And then 2 hours later, you're standing on a table, having come second, not even one, in the local pub quiz, and thinking, "I've just had the greatest night in my life." And look, I am easily pleased, because I love Wales, okay? But I've had these experiences too many times now for them to be coincidental. These experiences are out there all the time. The Llwyn Gwair in Newport, Pembrokeshire, another lock-in. Strange how these things, there's a sort of odd link between them all. Somebody had a funeral and a wake, and they went to Llwyn Gwair, and there was a woman who'd just fallen off a horse and broken off a leg. There was a bloke who used to, the local sheriff of Newport, Pembrokeshire, he claimed he was, and all these things, and all the crazy things that happen. They're unusual. This are not, this is the most important thing, is that, we need to do the offbeat more. We need to celebrate the offbeat more. We need to be different all the time, because we are different. It's a mad country full of, look at this place. Look at the ghosts and how many stories could be told here. If you could literally regale us for days on end with stories of Lily Langtry and such like, London socialites coming in. What were they doing here on the weekend? Oh no, just going walking. It was all above board and fine, wasn't it? I'm sure nothing untoward happened here at all, But it's just, these are the things that are so brilliant. And Portmeirion, what an inspiring, unusual, and that's what we should celebrate. And, and as I say, not making our visitors feel at home is the key thing. Guess what? My house, I love living in Brighton, okay? I wouldn't live anywhere else. But my house is rubbish, because there are bills waiting for me to come home. There's DIY all over the shop. I don't want to even think about home when I'm in Wales, okay? When I'm on holiday. So it's not about making your visitors feel at home. It's actually taking them somewhere that isn't their home. Yes, of course they've got to be comfortable. Don't worry about you will worry about Wi-Fi and about 3G and all those things. But after a while, people are desperate to engage with human beings, because they spend so much of their days staring at a screen, on an iPad, on an iPhone. They are desperate to engage. And I think we've got the product. We just need to be confident enough to be able to engage about it.